So, Eri, thanks for coming and joining us today. I want to know the story about BioCurious because it's such a neat idea within what is kind of a nascent citizen science movement.
It's nascent and it's still new to me. So we were actually doing, my co-founder and I of a startup called Lively, we were doing cancer research. So a friend of ours had passed away and we had a nonprofit at that time that was maybe a month and a half old. And we decided because of that, we were going to focus on cancer research. So we tried to find incubator space to do this research. And that proved to be very difficult or very expensive. So expensive, so both of them. We were not well funded. We were just two people who wanted to make a difference, and I believed had a lot of potential, which is why we started the company in the first place. And we figured out that the inputs of a lab are actually not as expensive as the price of incubators would make it seem. So we decided to give a shot at creating our own lab.
And when you say inputs, you're talking about the actual hardware that you need to get started?
Talking about the equipment, the tools, and the reagents. So the stuff that you need to do the everyday research, the stuff you throw away. And you know, it doesn't cost $6,000 a month just to maintain that lab, which is what we would have been paying at a lab like the San Jose Biocenter. So we built a lab. We looked on eBay, which was kind of a mistake. Stuff on there isn't as cheap as you think. We eventually found most of the bargains at auctions all over the country. So in one story, we went down to UCLA for a conference. This is a biohacking conference by chance, of course. And we drove a U-Haul back after hitting some companies that had gone out of business, essentially were, you know, letting off a bunch of equipment. Right. So state of the economy really helped. So we could pick up some stuff for pennies on the dollar. We built that lab, and at the time, you know, we had no intentions to do anything other than cancer research or to grow our nonprofit. There were a couple other things going on that really made it make sense to do a shared lab, to be more open, whereas before we were very, you know, we kept our cards close to our chest because we were doing research in a lab.
Right, and it was more also startup-y. You want to hold your secrets.
There was a sense of that. It was honestly more, we don't want to get in trouble because we don't want to get shut down. Like, you know, the worst thing that can happen in a company is you have to stop doing what you're doing. So, you know, you don't know what people are going to think of that. But that's a huge shift from the thinking of today, where garage bio is cool, where garage bio is something that the chairs of OSCON want you to come and talk about. And to me, I'm still in the state of disbelief because less than a year ago, we were in our garage saying, don't tell the neighbors, bring the stuff in at night. I hope my neighbors aren't watching this. But we've since moved, so it's okay. And there's been a huge shift in, I guess, what's okay and what's cool. So,
well, hacker spaces are developing around all sorts of things right now, and the idea of citizens coming in and, you know, your average Joe or Jane being able to build up whatever they're excited about or interested in is the thing right now. It's kind of, yeah, as you said, it's the cool thing. So I know that you were at the Quantified Self conference this past weekend, because I was. Yes, because I was. Do you see a connection between BioCurious and the Quantified Self?
So there's a very real connection because I started BioCurious and I'm starting a Quantified Self group. It's going to be announced July 19th, and it's going to be on the business of self-tracking, essentially. Quantified startup, but the name is working. So there's enough of a connection in like what is cool, what is new, what is focused on helping people in a very low-cost but like scientific way. And I see those sorts of parallels between BioCurious or citizen science. Like Quantified Self seems very citizen science to me. BioCurious as an organization and as a lab, place that provides resources to do research, isn't necessarily all about citizen science, but it has that effect when you change that environment to be, you know, like a hackerspace, like you mentioned. And it was seeing that culture that warm, welcoming culture of hackerspaces like Hacker Dojo and Noisebridge that made me think, I want to do this, but for science.
Yeah.
Because they needed it. My friends who are scientists didn't really want to be in their lab. They just had to be in their lab. So it's always like, I have to do this tonight, and I have to finish this project. There's never like enjoyment unless they were with their friends, totally geeking out about science. I'm like, why can't you just merge the geeking out with the actual research? Yeah. So that's what BioCurious is meant to be. And I guess you see that in hackerspaces, you see that in Quantified Self. It's the same culture, the same type of people, it's just different stuff. So BioCurious is also, an aim to break down those barriers and say, you can do science if you want to. You don't have to go, oh my God, I'm not a scientist. Like, don't mention reagents in a lab to me. And when you tell people it's okay, you get a lot more interest. So
giving people permission is awesome.
Yeah. No more ivory towers.
Thanks, Eri, for joining us. I know that I'm looking forward to your keynote coming up at OSCON.
Yes, thanks so much.